Man, I need to get a Band-Aid. Today I'm working on a Follett Symphony Plus ice machine that has black specks in the ice. I'm going to be replacing the upper and lower bearing. I'll show you basically step by step how that's done. So if you ever need to replace the upper and lower bearing on your Follett Symphony Plus ice machine, you know how to do it. Or if you find black specks in your ice, you can kind of figure out where it's coming from. I've got this machine all blown apart, taken the panels off, give myself as much access as possible. My upper and lower bearing, upper bearing, lower bearing are going to be right here on the top and bottom of the evaporator assembly. Black specks that I was talking about can be seen inside here. Kind of have to look closely, but it just looks like freckles, basically, black freckles all the way down throughout on the bottom. Every once in a while, they'll come out in the ice, but we want to get that to stop. The only places that they can be coming from the gear motor, which has some grease in it, could end up, water could end up going down inside the gear motor, and then obviously the oil grease will float to the top and then find its way out. Not super likely. Usually that would make a bigger mess. What usually is the cause of the black specks is the lower and upper bearing. One of the two, they start losing their grease, and then that grease comes out in small amounts, goes through the transport tube, ends up in the bin, and then the agitating of the ice just kind of spreads it out along the walls. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening this up to give us access to the upper and lower bearing. We're going to be taking off this clamp here and this clamp here. The top bearing should pull off, and then we should be able to lift the evaporator up and off of the lower bearing. Now that these nuts are taken off, the way these clamps come apart is you just kind of spread them and it'll come right out of there along with the bottom one. So now these, luckily this one seems loose. Sometimes they're stuck down in there pretty good and need some motivation. You can actually kind of see some black specks on this already. See if I can get you a good shot of what that looks like. Sometimes you can tell whether these bearings are good or bad by spinning them on your finger. You can kind of feel like a graininess where there are spots where the bearings aren't able to roll freely and they kind of get bound up. It's a sign that these things are failing. Any type of junk coming out of them, grease, black specks, usually a good sign that they're on their way out and you want to change them before they fail completely. Let me show you how to get the bottom one out. So before we pull the bottom one out, we're going to take this guy out. Kind of remember the way that goes in there. It's kind of weird, but it just sits here just like that. And then when the top bearing goes in, the top bearing is what holds that in place. That comes out, and then you can pull the auger up and out. And that just gets set off to the side. And that's the top of the lower bearing down inside there. We need to take this clamp off, or maybe just spread it out and push it down, and this should slide off just like that. And then without busting your refrigerant lines, you just have to get this thing. See, this hose right here is holding it back. Pull that off, and then this can kind of just set off to the side like that. Now I don't see too much oil and whatnot down in here, but in order to get the bottom bearing off, you have to loosen up the set screw, and then this will pop right up off of here. That actually has a little bit of a wiggle to it, and a wiggle in the bearings equals a wiggle for the auger, and when the auger wiggles too much, it scrapes the walls of the evaporator, and you end up with metal in the ice and a destroyed evaporator. Some of those scratch marks are like from the factory, it's just the way that the evaporator is machined, but you can tell the difference between what comes from the factory and what is a mark. Usually it'll be a really deep gouge that you can grab your fingernail on, plus you'll see metal flakes in the storage area and metal flakes in the spill tray. When the set screw gets loosened up, this in a perfect world should wiggle right up and out of there. If it doesn't come out right away, it may just need a little bit of motivation. Now, that looks bad, but the way this little O-ring here is supposed to work is supposed to keep, water from getting in there, but obviously water has found its way in there. Because water has gotten in there, it's displaced a lot of the grease, and the grease finds its way up and out of the bearing through whatever these little cracks and crevices are. So that's essentially where our black specks are coming from. This shouldn't be all wet down there. It's all wet down in there. We need to dry that out really well, get all the grease particles out, and then start working on doing our replacement. So I'm just gonna spend a couple minutes cleaning this area up really well. Once it's cleaned up, I will bust out the new lower and upper bearing and walk through the process of how to install them. All cleaned out in here. It's not perfect down inside there, but we're gonna be filling it back in with some grease, some of this silicone grease. Make sure that it's food grade, because in case something like this happens where you get your black specks inside the ice, you want it to be food safe and not something harmful to people. So we have our lower bearing, which comes with some grease already on it, but we'll be reapplying top bearing. And then this is the smaller circle here is a condensation shield. And then this is just one of the O-rings that'll actually sit inside this channel right here. I'm going to kind of put it together step by step and then show you. The lower bearing does come with some instructions. They're pretty self-explanatory. You just remove the old stuff, and then you're gonna re-grease everything, put the O-ring and the condensation shield in, and then when you go to put this guy in, the lower bearing, so you're gonna line it up just like this, and it should slip down inside there. After, obviously, we're gonna put the grease and the O-ring and the condensation shield inside there first, but then we're gonna tighten this up. One thing you want to be extra sure about is that this O-ring that sits, this O-ring, the outside one right here, sits inside that channel and it doesn't move. You want that in that groove, you want it greased up really well, and then when you put it down in there, it should create that nice seal to keep water from getting down into where the grease and the gear motor is. Here's what it looks like all greased up. It looks like all greased up with the condensation shield and the O-ring installed. This is the lower bearing. This O-ring here doesn't come pre-lubed up, or greased up, but I like to apply grease to that. It gives me a little bit more peace of mind that it's not gonna leak. Once those things are in there, ensuring that that O-ring is positioned correctly and this O-ring is positioned correctly, there's no dirt or debris on it. You're just gonna line it up and it should slip right down in there, right like that. We're gonna wanna push down on it, get it to go down all the way, and then as we push down on it, we're gonna be pushing down nice and hard, and then we're gonna tighten this guy up to keep it from popping up and out of that hole. Lower bearing is all replaced and secured. Set screw is in place and nice and tight, so this guy is not gonna pop up and out. What we're gonna do is put this guy down inside here. Probably spread it out all the way down, just like that. When I greased up this O-ring, I had a little bit of excess along the top, so I wiped it out really well because that is actually your sealing point or the seal point for the water that sits inside this evaporator. That keeps it from leaking out because this whole tube is full of water, or maybe up to halfway. Whatever the water level is inside this water trough, that's the water level that's basically going to be in here. And then if this O-ring isn't lubed up and clean and seated properly, then water is going to leak between the evaporator walls through down here, and then it's supposed to drip into here, go down the drain, but we don't really want it to drip into there at all. We want everything to stay inside of the evaporator. So once you get that in place, you're just gonna pull this back. I'm gonna need 2 hands to do it, but get it over the top and then just kind of drop it down into place. And then we'll go to tightening this guy up. This is what it looks like when the clamp's on. It's not completely tight yet. I want to be able to turn it a little bit because where this is pointing matters because of this insulation piece. So matches the up, but then it has this little corner and you want the angle of that bolt to match this. Otherwise, when you go to put this on, it won't fit. You have to loosen that up and adjust it. So you might as well just leave it a little loose now and do final tightening after you get the auger and everything put back into place. So speaking of auger, this will slide down inside and it'll just turn. It'll find its notch eventually. Oh, maybe not down far enough. What is it? There you go, just like that. This guy goes here. For some reason, the name of this guy is slipping my mind. It's not down low enough. This sits inside of that notch right there. So something needs to happen with that. I might need to pull it out and push it back down and in. For some reason, it's a little tight. Be careful, you will cut yourself, but that's more or less what it looked like, seated down where it's supposed to be. You take your little ring, stick it down inside here, and I need to get a Band-Aid. So initially, this will just sit just like that, just like that. And then you take your top bearing. Your top bearing has a bar in there that matches up with that bar. Goes down just like that. I'm actually going to take that O-ring off. I'm going to put some grease on it real quick, and then I'm going to put this down into place. But essentially, it's going to look just like, otherwise this guy won't go down in. So at the end, it'll look something like that. But like I said before, I'm going to put some grease on that O-ring, push this down into place, and then I'm going to take this clamp here and put it exactly like that one. make sure that they're lined up correctly, and then tighten them both at the same time. So this is more or less what it should look like. This still needs to be final tightened, and then my little white caps need to go on the end, just like that. The way to know where these threaded ends should point, just put this on here loosely. It'll give you a rough estimate of where it should be, and then just line up the bottom with the top and tighten it up. When you're done putting the insulation back on, it should look something similar to this. Now it's a matter of making sure that if you took off any of these hoses, like I did this one right here, to put it back on. Otherwise, you'll end up with a leak when you go back upstairs. Make sure you didn't make anything loose here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put all these panels back on. All done replacing the upper and lower bearing on this Follett Symphony Plus ice machine. That's how we eliminate the issue of black specks in the ice. If you don't already know, you're watching Ice Machine 411. My name is Jeff. If you got any value out of this video, consider becoming a channel member. If not, like and subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next time.